This is Reset Stories podcast Backstage, the full conversations with people who changed their lives. I am so excited. So I think I will start. I really would like to give a picture of how I met you because it was so beautiful. You in the
Yes.
Cinquecento up the hills, you were radiant and beautiful. Your family, Marco, your son was small, and we became.
Okay.
I feel also I witnessed a couple of your changes firsthand.
Oh, okay.
From before you became an author and after you got your book published, which is here, and
Yeah.
also when you moved from Miami to Geneva. So many things to
Huge life
talk about.
transitions. Yeah,
Oh
and
my
you
God,
saw some personal things with my the family drama with my father,
I
and I
know.
think like a lot of personal things. I think you saw me before when I was like still the golden child trying to please a narcissist, and then after where I gave up that role, I said no more. Did you remember your stomach tightening up around him? Like you're like, ooh, like
Yeah. Oh, but also
yeah.
I had a terrible father, so it's
Okay.
also
Well,
it's also that.
but he
So
does give those
I
vibes. You're like, oh,
no, not that your father was terrible, but the bad relationship, like a bad father
yeah,
figure, or a, like less than ideal. I pick up on that instantly. It's just like a
yeah.
so
Mhm.
anyway, we start with this big
Yes.
question: who are you? Enormous question, and what you do now, and then we trace it back. Sylvia Kalichinsky, or Dr. Sylvia K, or Sylvia simply, as I know you, who you are and what you do now.
So my name is Dr. Sylvia Kalichinsky, but people know me as Dr. Sylvia K. So who I am by profession, I'm a therapist. I have a PhD in family therapy. So I identify my profession of someone who is in the healing arts. And I knew from a very young age, I always wanted to help people. I remember at the age of 7, someone had asked me, an adult, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I said, I want to be a doctor, but I don't want to be a doctor that works with blood and needles. I want to be a doctor that helps people. So fast forward at the age of 40, I finally get a PhD in philosophy, but a PhD in family therapy. And I am helping people. I'm a mother. I have a beautiful son, 10 years old, Marco Aurelio. Yes, his name is Marco Aurelio, named on purpose. My husband is Swiss. But his family is from Italy. So we absolutely love Italy. Italy's always had a very special place in my heart. Obviously, it's somewhere where my husband went for Christmas and summer, and his family was there. So he was always going back and forth. But also who I am, I think I'm my essence. I am a seeker. I'm a person who loves to learn. I'm a connector. I love to connect people. I try to lead my life by curiosity. That's what helps me be a therapist, is to be curious about people's backgrounds. But more than that, I think what my PhD helped me do is become more curious about the context of situations. I'll never forget, there's a line I learned in my program: when you broaden the context, all behavior makes sense. So that's what I love about being a systemic thinker, is that I'm trained to think in systems, but to broaden the context, to ask more questions, which sometimes I forget to do in my own personal life. But I think going back to my essence, definitely someone who loves the unknown, but equally is scared of the unknown. I love the creative arts. I love meeting people like you who is so in touch with their creativity and their imagination. I'm definitely, I think, a person who's maybe more of an international citizen of the world. I don't really identify with one place as home. But I'm just so grateful to be here with you, to talk with you, to share, and also just to reflect on.
You had a
Yes,
clear understanding of what you wanted to be, which is great.
yes,
But when I met you, you lived in Miami. That was the place
yes.
you grew up?
Well, I was born and raised in Houston, Texas. I've lived
Oh,
all over, but the place where I've spent the most time is Miami Beach. But I've lived in Phoenix, Arizona, Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, Charlotte, North Carolina, London, Houston, where I was born, but I believe Miami really is my second home. It's where I went. I first moved there when I was 20, right after college. And I've had two periods there where I lived, one from 20 to 27, and then another period from, I believe I was 31 until 40, 44.
Wow. So that's why you say, I feel like I'm a citizen of the world, even though you feel like Miami is your kind
Yeah.
of your home, or at least it was. You,
Yes,
but
yes.
then you moved to Geneva, which to me, when I heard that you did that enormous change, they cannot be more different, Miami Beach and Geneva, in my mind. And I felt I was reliving the move from New York to Milan, even though it was my country. It wasn't really, it was a big, big change. And I felt scared that you would be sad. How was that leap?
I think your intuition was spot on because I was very sad once I actually moved here. The idea of it was quite romantic. I had been living in Miami Beach for almost at that time 12 years. And I think that the biggest factor for me was my son was 6 years old. He was in school, and someone had wrote on one of the I guess, dry erase boards in year 5. Suicide and depression are real. I'm coming back to the school to shoot you all up. And at the time, it was when there was a lot of gun violence. There's still a lot of gun violence in the US. And, no matter how beautiful Miami Beach is and how exotic and, just multicultural, et cetera, when you're a parent of a young child and you don't know when you drop your child off at school, could something happen today? And when it was just felt so close to home, that really scared me. And it simultaneously, at the same time, my husband had an opportunity to move back to Switzerland. He was promoted in his company. And so I said, okay, we've got to do this. I wanted my son to have an international experience because yes, Miami is great when you're young and, you have all this energy. But I think to raise a child, there's certain values there that I think are highlighted that may not be the best for young children, or it's kind of like in a small bubble and you think Miami is the world, which is obviously not. So for me, I felt those two values, safety and my son having an international experience and learning about new cultures and understanding the broader context of the world, I was willing to sacrifice the conveniences, the sunshine, the beauty, the familiarity of Miami because I knew as a long-term investment, Geneva would give us the best return of our investment. And so the first year I came in, and I think it was a Sunday. I had just come back from Capalbio, and we arrived. It was raining. It was August. There was a huge thunderstorm. Everything was closed. And I had my first meltdown. My husband had driven 9 hours from Capalbio to Geneva, is about 9.5 hours. We did it in one day. So he was napping, exhausted after driving, and it all settled in. I thought, oh my gosh, we're not going back, because I'd been to Geneva before on vacation. Beautiful. But that feeling of I'm here, in a way, stuck. I'm stuck. I can't go back. And I had this huge cry, like sobbing, couldn't breathe, like, and just looking around, having that WTF moment, like, what the fuck did I just sign up for? And that was really hard. And I think the hardest part was just being at my age at 44. I had just built my career to a place where I'd always wanted it to be. I was in Miami Beach. I had my private practice. I had a full practice of 30 clients. I had my podcast starting. I was in my book proposal. Publishers were looking at my books. I was speaking in hospitals. I was getting like speakers fees. I was like, yes, finally, like I'm not a struggling therapist that's barely paying the bills. And so to unplug, it was like the best part of the movie, and someone just unplugged the TV and you're like, wait. And then the feeling of having to start all over again at 43 years old, it just felt so overwhelming. And I was sad because of several factors. Not having the same amount of sunshine, vitamin D, vitamin K. Sad I had given up a sense of community that I finally had the courage to build, because my entire, I would say, 20s and 30s, I was scared to make friends with females. I had a mother wound, I had that female wound. I was scared to get close to women because I had, stepmoms that were really mean. So I always had this like subconscious fear, women are mean, women are catty, they're going to talk behind your back, they're going to hurt you, don't get too close. So I finally met a group of moms at my son's school that I had become friends with. So giving that up made me really sad. And just that feeling of, I have to begin all over again, which in a way, looking back now, it kind of reminds me of this Tibetan tradition where they create a mandala made out of sand, and it's this beautiful colored sand, and they spend months creating this beautiful piece of art. And guess what they do when they finish?
They erase
They
it.
erase it. Yeah. To start all over again. Like that practice of non-attachment.
Oh,
So it was, that first year was such a lesson of non-attachment and starting over. But honestly, looking back, I think it was the best thing for all of us as a family, but also for me. I have been able to meet new people. I've built a community here, and I just got back from Miami, and that doesn't mean I have to give up the old one. So now I'm trying to embrace this both and concept, which is a systemic, style of thinking. I can call both Miami and Geneva my home. I can both miss Miami and love Geneva. I can both hate Geneva, and love Miami. So you allow space for two opposite feelings that can exist at the same time. And I think that gives you some psychological support to embrace change, because if you're in that either or, it's either Miami or Geneva. And that's what created a lot of suffering in the beginning, because I was like, I hate Geneva. I want to go back to Miami, as if Miami was the only place. And I wasn't giving Geneva a try. And then finally, my close friend, who's also a therapist, she said, Sylvia, you have to discover Geneva through your own eyes. Stop trying to look at Geneva through your husband's eyes, through his childhood, through his history, through what's familiar to him. Let go of your son's connection to Geneva, which is through sports. Find Geneva for yourself. So I found a writers group. I found bookstores that I loved. I found cafes that I loved. I found little running trails that I loved. I eventually found a running club that I joined. So slowly I discovered Geneva through my eyes, and it's starting to feel like at home. But at the same time, with all transparency, I just got back from Miami last week, and I'm in that same position again where, do I go back? I love it so much. I miss it. It's booming. It's hot. There's so much growth there. There's all these tech companies. It's progressive.
oh my God. I can listen to you forever. I loved what you said. It's such a beautiful way of saying it, to create space. If you
Yes.
create space within you, you can have both Miami and Geneva. You can have the bad and the good all together in one. But if you have a small space, only a few things fit. It's such a beautiful way of seeing
Yeah.
it, instead of black
Yeah.
and white, yes or no.
Exactly.
It takes a lot of energy.
It does. Yeah, I'm having a spontaneous idea. So my father would always give me these strange analogies of life that I never understood. It would be too much, too complex, too philosophical for me. And so my father's Eastern European, born and raised in Poland. He's been living in Kazakhstan for a very long time. But sometimes he would tell me, like, Sylvia, life is like, sorry, I hope I don't offend anyone with my accent, but I just love to do it. It sounds more Russian than Polish, but he does live in Kazakhstan, so he sounds more Russian now. So he says, Sylvia, life is like a river. You'll know. I don't know. He's like, you cannot go against stream, but eventually you have to find your way home. I'm like, what does that mean? I'm 10 years old. But in this moment, as we were talking about the both and, both Geneva and Miami can be home, and whoever's listening, I hope, you can embrace that concept that, you can both miss and love something and create space for both. But I was just thinking, my father would probably say, Sylvia, and like wind, you think wind only belong to one country? Wind travel around the world. Whole world wind goes. Wind is wind, right? So I could just imagine, like, the wind is not specific. We have air currents. It's not just hovering in one country and says, okay, I belong only to Switzerland. I belong only to Italy. So I think also, I think one of the secrets of life for a qualitative life is learning to become adaptive, is learning to become fluid, is learning, how to stay in movement. But again, like you were saying, to really create more space for all the feels, not just the good ones, but allowing yourself to have compassion that it is a human experience to feel grief, to feel loss, to feel sadness, to feel resentment, to feel hate, to feel anger, to feel lust, to feel horniness, to feel love, to feel, excitement, creativity. There are so many rich emotions that come in our human experience, especially when you're going through major life changes, whether that's moving or changing careers or just shifting from, one phase of your life to the next. So I think just broadening, creating again more space to allow yourself to feel it all. And it doesn't mean that something's wrong with you. If one predominant emotion feels like it's lasting a bit longer, especially if it feels like loss or grief.
The fact that usually we try to run away from uncomfortable feelings, I think causes a lot of
Yes.
damage, right? We
Yes.
pretend to be okay for the world, especially
Mhm.
now with social. That's why this is what I love to go into the hard part of changing, um, because I am so glad that you actually, in a way, I don't know if this is the right expression, but rebuild a new life for you in Geneva. You have your friends, you have a circle of people that you can rely on, and that we'll talk
Right.
about loneliness because yeah, that's an enormous topic. I also love to know how actually factually a person changes. So you had all those clients in Miami. How did you eventually build your professional life from zero, I guess, in
Yes.
Geneva?
Yes. Well, I was lucky because being licensed in Florida under the law, I could technically still see clients who lived in Florida virtually. Thank goodness I had at least two or three clients virtually that I could work with. But again, I had to work American hours. So there's usually I was working Eastern Standard Time. So that helped. I don't know what I would have done if I didn't have at least two or three clients. Because for me, being a therapist in my profession is such a big part of my identity to be of help. And also it's the conversations that I have with clients that, for me, being a therapist is such a privilege because you have the privilege of listening to people's, vulnerable stories. You have the privilege of listening to the details of their history that maybe they wouldn't feel comfortable sharing with a friend. Um, so not having that, I think, yeah, would have been really difficult. So I would see a couple of clients online, but it still wasn't enough for income. Geneva's extremely expensive. I mean, just to put
Mm.
things in context, just a burger at Five Guys is 25 francs, which is about 30 US dollars, which would be about, I don't know, at 28 euros for a burger. It's like, give me a break. Anyways, it's expensive,
Oh my
especially food
God.
here. But everything's expensive. Groceries, gas, rent. It's just like, oh my goodness. So I was panicking a little bit, and I was getting pressure from my husband because even him, he was saying, "I can't do this on one salary. You've got to figure it out." So I rented a small office, Regis, these like a corporate office, and I couldn't get any clients. I was doing word of mouth. I was trying to meet new people, like, hey, I'm a licensed therapist in the U.S. If you know any Americans or English speaking, expats that are looking for a therapist, let me know. But here's, I think, the weird thing about if you believe in the universe and timelines and all of that. My book coach kept telling me, let go of the timeline on your book proposal and how your book is going to be published. And at the same time, I had to tell myself, let go of the timeline of when these clients are going to come in. So then I just used the space to update my book proposal and was hoping to send it out again to a publisher. So that took time. And I remember my husband came to me and he said, Sylvia, I think it's time to just let go of this pipe dream that you have, and you need to get a real job. Like, I don't know where, but just sign up, start filling out like online applications for a real job. I'm like, what do you mean a real job? I have a real job. And I'm one of those people, if you tell me like no, or you poo-poo on my dream, it'll give me that fight in me and that fire of like, I'm going to show you. And so I remember we were actually driving to Capalbio, and I got an email from a publisher saying, "Hi, I saw your Instagram. Have you thought about traditionally publishing? I'd love to set up a call." And I thought it was spam. Thought they were going to ask me for $10,000, et cetera, et cetera. Long story long, I found out it was a real publisher, and I showed my husband. I was like, "You see, it is a real deal." I got the book deal, started writing. And then clients started coming in. It was almost like I needed that time first to get the book deal. And then clients started coming in. So it was slowly word of mouth. And I found on a group mom chat that there was a therapist who was leaving for maternity and she wanted to sublease her office. So I took that as an opportunity. Again, I only had maybe one client. And I went into that space. And then finally, it was being in the right space that people started coming in. The word of mouth started coming in. So I had clients from my son's international school. So I have a kind of a hybrid practice, people from Geneva coming in to see me face to face, and then a nice collection of people from Florida. And then I've also, with the office, had enough space and time to finish the book. So it just all came together. But I think, like anything in life, sometimes you don't see the result you want right away. And it's so easy to fall into the pits of doubt, because I did. I said, maybe this was all just a pipe dream, or, maybe it's really not going to happen. I'm going to be so embarrassed. And actually, you were one of my inspirations. Was like, I got to go back to Capalbio and tell her that I finally wrote the book, because after all these years telling Martha, I'm going to write a book, I'm going to write a book, I can't let her down. But I just kept imagining. I use a lot of visualization when I'm stuck in doubt. And I said, okay, one day, I don't know when it is, but one day I'll be holding this book and I'd visualize it. Or one day I'll be talking to Martha and tell her, like, I finally did it. Look. So if you are listening and you're stuck in doubt, use 17 seconds. It's a tool that Esther Hicks used to use. It's a woman who's all about manifestation. And she would say, just visualize the thing for 17 seconds, create a movie in your head, touch the thing, feel the thing, smell the thing. But the most important part of this tool of 17 seconds is you gotta bring in the emotion of joy. Joy is an activator. Joy brings this type of energy to anything that you want to manifest, that gives this certain vibration that I believe that really brings like the law of attraction in, but like from where you are now to where you want to be, it just kind of like brings it in. So if you've ever written a screenplay and you had this moment of like a burst of joy through co-creating, it just gives it this energy. And so the other thing about joy is you're training the body from a neurological level to release dopamine, serotonin, because when we're in doubt, our brain releases the cortisol and we stay in fear, and our body becomes familiar with this conditioning of fear and lack. And you ironically will attract more of it if you stay stuck in that. But if you use this 17 seconds of visualizing your preferred outcome and you bring joy, and you even try to fake a smile, like just like extend the little corners of your mouth, even if you don't know how to smile, just stretch those little corners of your mouth for 17 seconds, let your brain release that serotonin. And you practice that once a day. It is incredible what will happen. I've used that trick for several big things in my life. When I was single and lonely in LA, when I was single and lonely in Miami, when I was, full of doubt and insecure here in Geneva, there were things that I was really clear that I wanted, and I just kept visualizing the thing, bringing in that sense of joy. And so it's almost like a vision board, but it's in your head. And again, the most important active ingredient is infusing it with joy. And it's incredible. A lot of people are like, oh, that's so woo-woo. But everyone that I've really kind of like pushed to practice it, they'll come back and they'll say, it works, but don't tell anyone that I told you that.
Well, first of all, even if it doesn't work, first of all, let's try something different. And it's not forcing yourself to live in misery for 17 seconds. It's actually doing a happy trip into a future that might come true. So I think, why not give it a try?
Yeah. Or just give yourself a break from all those automatic negative thoughts.
Absolutely. Especially because people who listen to us are usually, okay, people who, like me, like you, have changed their lives, but also people who are uh, thinking about it, who want to get inspired. And when you are in that phase, when you're stuck after you move, or when you're stuck because you don't know where to go, but you know that this is not right, 17 seconds a day, it's nothing. It's actually, it might work. I do believe in
Yes.
magic, right? I
Yeah.
mean, is this magic? It might sound like magic,
In
but
a way, magic, yes, but I think neuroscience could back it up and say, okay, if you are thinking about a preferred outcome, something that you really want, and you are able to activate an emotion of joy, or if you don't know what joy feels like, just simply moving the corners of your mouth activates 32 muscles in your face, which is proven scientifically that your brain will begin to release serotonin into the bloodstream. So if you're experiencing serotonin, and you have that little boost of your mood, and you're thinking about something that you like and that you want, neurologically that reduces inflammation in the body because you're not releasing all the cortisol. um, I would say like your neurochemistry, right? In terms of also neurolinguistics, neurons are firing off in a different way when you're thinking or imagining or using words in your head that are again associated with things that bring you joy or your preferred outcome, or if it's your dream. So yes, could it be called magic? Yes, but I also think working with your body chemistry, and it's a true brain hack to reduce that cortisol. It's interrupting cortisol flood that we get when we're worrying about the thing we don't want to happen. And I think what most of us don't understand, this is what I was really impressed by Joe Dispenza's work. If you don't know Joe Dispenza, um, he was a chiropractor, but also studied neuroscience, and he does a lot of meditations on helping people recondition their emotional body. Because many of us who've experienced maybe CPTSD, chronic post traumatic stress disorder, that basically defines anyone who experienced an ongoing stressor for years in their life and they didn't see an end. So if you had a narcissistic parent, maybe you had a parent that had some kind of illness and it was unpredictable. Would they stay alive? Were they capable of being your parent? Maybe you experienced some socioeconomic stressor or political stress or war. Anything that was ongoing, that felt uncertain, that just went on and on and on. Your body is wired, most likely, to be hypervigilant, to be more prone to stay in your sympathetic nervous system where you're reactive, you're always on guard, you're scanning the room. And most of the time, you've become so conditioned to doing that, you don't even realize that. But we're all walking around really tense. All the tiny muscles are already contracted. We're sensitive to sounds, energy, changes in the environment. We can read people. We do that all really well. But what happens is with CPTSD, it really drains the nervous system. So by the time you get into your late 30s, early 40s, after years of carrying all this stress, you're just like, gosh, I'm so tired. And what also happens is when you were raised in any of these environments where you had CPTSD, maybe there was a sense of scarcity. Maybe there was a sense of criticism, a sense of lack. Maybe you didn't have your basic emotional needs met. Maybe you didn't feel seen. Maybe you didn't feel safe. Maybe you didn't feel a sense of belonging. So your body became conditioned to feeling that way. And ironically, your body learns, well, it's normal to feel scared. I don't really mean normal, but it is the status quo of my body is constantly feeling scared or protective or on guard because I have to survive my environment. So if I'm conditioned to do that, that just becomes my own homeostasis. And what happens is that later, let's say in our 20s or our 30s, when we're really maybe starting a career, dreaming a new dream, changing life, changing partners, and we want something different, we can self-sabotage ourselves because our conditioning is used to, well, I'm used to feeling scared. I'm used to feeling alone. I'm used to feeling unseen. I'm used to playing really small. I'm used to hiding. I'm used to not trusting people. And then unconsciously, we project that onto partners. We project that onto possibilities of a dream, a deal. It's like, oh, I used to say, oh, I'm not smart enough to write. I'm a terrible writer. I don't know how to write. And then I literally believed that. And then I said, 17 seconds, Sylvia. And there was a voice in me that says, you got it right. But my cognitive abilities were so limited by these deep self-limiting thoughts, because my father used to call me stupid all the time. Why you're so stupid? Don't act so stupid. Why are you
Oh.
stupid? How you don't know? You are so stupid. And it's that Eastern European parenting, you know? If
Mm.
anyone listening that's Slavic or, has any connections to Eastern, countries, and you have a parent that, was born before 1950, that was how they were raised. They were just repeating what they knew. And so, I say that this 17-second rule, or even something, as simple as your future self writing back to you now, where you can create this preferred future of what you see. But what you're doing is you're training your brain to start experiencing a different emotion. So you have scarcity, you have fear, you have all your survival adaptive qualities. But what you're also doing is creating neuroplasticity. If for 17 seconds, I could imagine my second book and someone's holding it, and I'm touring bookstores, and I'm connecting with people, then for 17 seconds, my neurons are firing off. And then I create literally a new neural feedback in my brain that I can go to. But in imagining I'm at bookstores, I'm surrounded with people I love, I'm experiencing a new emotion in my body based on joy, based on community, based on connection, based on gratitude. I am training that little Sylvia that she can feel something different in her body. She doesn't have to stay scared. She doesn't have to stay in that limited thought that she's stupid. She doesn't have to feel ashamed of herself, which, to anyone listening, we can't get rid of our pain points. No matter how many changes you make in your life, and no matter how much therapy you've done, or how many self-books you've done, or how many meditations or meditation retreats you've done, we will always have our pain points. We'll revert back to those original insecurities and original self-limiting beliefs, because that's what was wired in our body. However, the more you learn new tools, you create new neural feedback loops where your brain can go to. But in terms of neuroplasticity, you're shaping and molding your brain in a new way, that you're giving your brain options. So I could go back to thinking I'm stupid, which I did today. I didn't feel stupid. I felt ashamed. I was feeling like this is something that is reoccurring for anyone, I think, who's experienced CPTSD. We can carry this deeply rooted sense of shame, and shame is based on an identity. I am bad. Guilt is based on an action. I did something bad. I can apologize. Shame is, I am bad. So I'm riding my bike and I'm feeling this heavy, heavy sense of shame. I'm like, oh God, here it comes again. Oh. And then I just brought in the context. I said, Sylvia, this is your pattern. At the end of every school year, for some reason, you feel this deep sense of sadness and this sense of shame. And I think saying it out loud, I think what it brings up for me is, in my teens and even in college, I didn't have a home to go back to. My dad was in Kazakhstan. He was 46 with a 20-year-old girlfriend. I felt ashamed of that. I felt ashamed that also I was all on my own. I didn't have that support. School was my support. School gave me that structure. School gave me that sense of belonging. And so at the end of summer, it was kind of that feeling of, I'm scared. Well, where do I go? I'm going to go back to Poland, but my dad's not going to be there. Well, then I've got his wife there. I don't really like her. God, I hate it that I'm 16 and she's 20, And so I carried a lot of shame around that. So I'm just bringing all of this up, is that we will sometimes, in the most awkward, unfamiliar, unexpected ways, revert back to these really raw, vulnerable pain points. But if you then acknowledge it and say, this is one of my patterns, or this is one of my vulnerabilities. Okay, for 17 seconds, how do I really want to feel? And I'm riding my bike and I'm like, I want to feel grateful that I'm riding a bike in Switzerland. I want to feel grateful that it's beautiful, it's sunny, there's a blue sky. I'm grateful that I'm going to be on a podcast today with Marta. I'm grateful that I can move my body. I'm grateful that I did write a book. Like, I'm grateful that I can help other people acknowledge that we all carry shame in some way, and that you don't have to feel alone in feeling it yourself as if you're the only one. I want to broaden the context that a lot of us feel embarrassed about things that we don't put into words. And so that's, I think, where I'm going, whether it's 17 seconds to manifest something or simply 17 seconds to redirect, because that's what mindfulness is really about, is to remember the moment and to redirect your attention to something else that's happening in the present moment. And my last tool that I'll offer you is my body skill, BODY. B stands for breath. So we could simply right now together, Marta, take a slow inhale through our nose. Yeah. And just do that 2 more times. So try to take a slower inhale and a longer exhale. Yeah. And this time, keep your mouth closed. Yeah. And exhale slowly out. So that's the breath. Now, O, I want you to observe 3 colors around you and name the colors as you see them. Name them out loud.
Yellow, orange, white.
Now name 3 objects around you and name the objects as you see them.
Door, lamp, microphone.
Okay. And now name 3 sounds that you hear live in your environment.
Clock, humming of the dehumidifier, your voice.
Okay. And now take one more slow, gentle inhale through your nose. And exhale, make a ha sound. What do you notice different in your body now compared to when we first hit play on the podcast?
I'm not sweating. I as if something has unclenched.
Unclenched, yeah. That's wonderful. So I call that body skill 90 seconds to calm. It takes 90 seconds to notice 3 colors, 3 sounds, 3 objects, and then you come back to your breath. That helps shift from that sympathetic nervous system where we're active and we're, paying attention, and maybe we're sweaty and we're excited about the podcast and we're thinking of the next question. And then the body skill brings you back into your body. And I always tell people, don't practice that when you're stressed, because you'll be at a breakdown point. You'll be at a skills breakdown point. You won't remember to use it. But if you start practicing the body skill with something that you do daily, maybe it's drinking your cup of coffee in the morning, maybe it's in the shower and you're just, washing your hair, and you could do it with some habit you already do daily, that will train your body to know that when you do get stressed out, you have this tool to come back to bring your attention to something else that's happening in the present moment that has nothing to do with the thing that you're worrying about or stressed about or doubting or hating or fighting in your head. And so whether it's 17 seconds or the body skill or your future self writing back to you, I think these are all tools that can really help with your brain chemistry, with your mood. And I think the biggest is your perspective. Your attention is the most valuable thing you have. Everybody now is competing for your attention. Every app, every form of technology wants Marta's attention. And they want to keep and hold your attention for as long as they can. And it's the most precious thing you have, because your attention affects your subconscious mind, your unconscious mind, your mood, your perspective. So I think we need to become more aware of what we are giving our attention to, who is competing for our attention, and how to redirect our attention so that we can truly protect our nervous systems and connect to ourselves on a deeper level, even if it's as simple as 3 colors, 3 sounds, 3 objects. You're connecting to your breath. You're connecting to just that awareness of yourself. And from there, I think that's where true connection happens. And I think that's where we start to really, in a way, combat loneliness. That's where we start to how do we fix or help or solve loneliness? It's those little micro moments where you can connect to yourself and bring that awareness and attention and intention within for even 90 seconds, that then creates that sense of belonging and connection and allows you to be more fully yourself when you engage in the world again.
This is so beautiful, Sylvia. I have your book here, which I witnessed from the very beginning, from Capalbio to the presentation in New York. What a beautiful gift. First of all, thank you, because what you said, these tools are an incredible help, because when you are changing any decision you make, especially the big ones, you need to be self-aware. you need to have less distractions around you, either the infrastructure of social, respectability, or whatever it's the world expects of you. If you know yourself, if
Yes.
you're in touch with yourself without all the distractions, you make better
Yes.
decisions. So, right.
Yes.
but
100%.
but you wrote about loneliness, and there's a part in your book when you say we live in a culture that pathologizes loneliness, which I found so interesting. There's a quote by Pierpaolo Pasolini, which was a writer, a journalist, and also a great director in the 60s in Italy. And he said, independence, which is my strength, implies solitude, which is my weakness. And I always saw
Mm.
loneliness in a sense of being disconnected from yourself and from the world and from your loved ones. It's a danger. It's like a
Yeah,
dangerous situation when you're lonely, because you make the
absolutely.
worst decision for yourself, right?
Yes.
I would love to hear your take on why is it that society pathologizes loneliness? In what way?
Yes. So I think, first of all, just the word lonely already has stigma, as if you made a mistake or you're a loser or something is wrong with you or you're not wanted or you're a burden. I think anyone to admit I'm lonely, it just feels like you're saying, "Oh, I'm a loser. I'm lonely. Nobody likes me. Nobody wants me. I'm not accepted. I don't belong. Or I failed, some way or another." And I think also sometimes people might attach a sense of burden that if you admit you're lonely to someone, it's putting a burden on the listener as if they need to fix it or they're going to pity you, which you don't want, etc. So I think that's just kind of social stigma. I also do think there's a difference between loneliness and solitude. My distinct understanding is solitude is chosen, right? I'm going to choose to go on a Vipassana retreat, and I'm choosing solitude to meditate, to not speak, to get in touch with my brain and hear all the crazy thoughts. Or I'm going to choose solitude and meditate and write, and I'm going to choose not to interact with people, or I'm going to choose to spend some time in the mountains or by the lake, to be in nature, to be solitude but with my soul. I feel like that's a chosen engagement connection with your soul, with your energy. Loneliness, I don't feel is chosen. Loneliness usually is uninvited, unexpected. It's not something that you really want. It just happens. So maybe someone broke up with you and you didn't want it. Or even maybe you wanted the breakup, but you didn't really want to feel so alone afterwards. Maybe somebody died, you feel so alone. Maybe you are in a room full of people, you have family, you're successful at your career, but you still feel lonely because you are too tied to a persona or an identity that's not who you truly are, and you don't know how to let that mask go, and you feel like no one really knows you in the room. I think especially in marriage is probably one of the most common experiences of loneliness, is that you feel that your partner really doesn't know you, or they don't get you, or you change and evolve and your partner's not. And you feel more lonely in the change and the evolution, and then the partner too, because they're like, well, my partner's changed so much, I don't recognize them. They have different likes and interests, and they're doing this thing now, and I don't like that thing that they're doing. And so that feeling of being misunderstood or forgotten, I think that can be an example of loneliness. But for me in the book, I lean into emotional loneliness, which is that feeling that some of your basic intrinsic rights as a human being are not being mirrored in relationship or by the world. So one of our intrinsic needs as a human being to exist and survive is the need to take up space, to exist. I have the need to exist. And when people ignore you, one of the most horrible things about modern day dating is ghosting.
Oh
To
my God.
ghost someone and treat someone as if there was never any connection, as if you didn't exist. I don't know you. I'm not going to respond. I'm going to pretend like we never talk. Like, that hurts on such a deep level, because it's like I never existed. They just ghosted me. Like, how could you do that? Right? Or stonewalling a person. People do that in relationships when they get really mad. I'm going to walk to the kitchen and make my coffee, and I'm going to ignore you. You don't exist to me. And that hurts on such a deep level, because we are wired to be recognized, to be seen, to be heard. We are wired to feel safe, to feel a sense of belonging. And when we don't get those needs met, we experience a huge disconnect from ourselves. We feel a huge disconnect from the community or the family or the whatever place that you are. And that is deep loneliness. I think another version of emotional loneliness is not knowing who you are because you've been tied to playing these identities to survive. And you're so used to playing these identities like the people pleaser, the high achiever, the perfectionist, the responsible one, the caretaker. And these roles are usually given to you in your family system. They were not chosen by you, but you were cast into this role by someone in your family system, consciously or unconsciously. And when you get stuck in those roles, often you don't even know who you are. You don't know what you really like or don't like. You don't know, also what your real feelings are because you're used to masking them. Or me, I'm a famous chameleon. Like I am really good at looking at the environment, like, okay, who do I need to be? How do I need to act so that I can blend in, so I can get you to like me because I need to survive because my dad lives in Kazakhstan. I don't really have connections with my brothers. I don't have any like resources in terms of family support. So I need you to like me so I can survive. And just side
Wow.
note, one of the animals that have lived the longest and have the most highest adaptability are dogs. And the one quality about dogs that have allowed them to be a species that has lasted the longest and not gone extinct is their likability. Their eyes will get really wide. Their tail will shake. They'll put their paw, like me. I'll cuddle with you. I'll do a cute thing. I'll stay by you. Like me. So the human doesn't kill the dog because they're like, oh, you're so likable. You're so cute. Live with me and be my domestic companion. And so humans can be like that. If you're a people pleaser or a chameleon, you have learned to figure out how to get people to like you so you can feel these intrinsic needs. You see me. You hear me. Oh, if you like me, I feel a sense of belonging. And if you like me, I feel safe because you're not going to hurt me. And that ultimately I can sense can feel really lonely because it takes a lot of energy to anticipate other people's needs, to get people to like you, to play all these different roles. And then you just get really exhausted. And I think the reverse can happen is you enter depression because your nervous system gives so much, being in this hypervigilant mode, being active, being aware. Okay, what do you need? Your micro expressions. Do you want a cup of water? Do you need help? Here's this thing. Here's that thing. You say yes, 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 yes to all these invitations. People asking you to help. And then you feel so exhausted because you don't know how to say no. You don't want people to be mad at you. And then you enter a little form of depression. I don't mean to diminish it by saying little form, but you can enter some form of depression because you implode. The nervous system needs to recharge yourself. So then you don't want to call anyone. You don't want to answer text. You want to disappear because I really think it's both the soul and the nervous system saying, I'm so exhausted, trying so hard to be liked. I just want to be me, but I don't know who that is because you don't allow me the space to find that.
Oh my God. That's amazing. I don't think it's just a Eastern European thing because my father spent all my late childhood into my teenage years, into my early adulthood, calling me stupid. So much so that when I started, I don't know if it happened to you too, when I realized in college that it's not just the grades because the grades don't mean anything, but when I realized that I was solving problems in my real life, that I was like, my brain functioned normally, I was so surprised. I was surprised because I was so convinced that I was stupid and worthless. This is another thing that he said. You're worth nothing. You don't mean anything. You're worthless. Oh my God. But
So
it really
sorry he
resonated.
said that. It's
I
like
know.
it's like you hear the words, you're just like, that he must have been in so much pain and he must have heard it himself so many times that he was unconsciously transmitting this pain without even knowing it. And that shows that you are a generational cycle breaker, which I feel a lot of people our age, in their late 30s, early 40s, early 50s. I think where we are generationally, we are breaking these cycles that have lasted for hundreds of years, which can be exhausting because we're absorbing the transmission of all these unresolved, unprocessed patterns of hurt, pain, unspoken things, unresolved trauma, things, secrets. And, I just want to acknowledge anyone who identifies as a generational cycle breaker. It takes enormous strength to do what you're doing. And it would make sense to me that sometimes you feel anxious or depressed or exhausted or tired, because I think you're doing so much for at least 3 generations behind you. And you're processing and trying so hard not to pass that down to future generations, even if you don't have children, just to break that cycle with yourself and not call yourself stupid, or when you do, you interrupt and you say, I don't have to call myself that anymore. I prefer not to believe that anymore. I prefer to write a new story. I prefer to be curious and embrace my curiosity.
Yes, oh, it's so true. You have also a workbook that goes with your book, and it has a process which is beautiful. I love the fact that the first thing to do is to hear the emotions,
Yes.
feel what you have, recognize them.
My main goal, though, with this book, Lonely AF, is to reframe loneliness as an invitation to get to know yourself on a much deeper level, but to truly connect to yourself, maybe for the first time. Maybe you're someone that's felt a bit lost. Maybe you're someone who's like, I don't really know who I am. Or maybe you felt like you used to know who you were, but you don't know who you are anymore. If we could rebrand loneliness, not as something to be embarrassed about, not as a burden, not as some form of failure, but as a universal human experience that we will all go through. And even though it's not something that you chose to experience, it's a special invitation, just like the Willy Wonka, you got the golden ticket, and you are being invited to connect to a part of you that you have been neglecting, ignoring, or that you haven't connected to ever. And if you can break it down with my heart method, if you could just, H is honor the emotion. Name it. This is sadness. This is jealousy. This is a sense of failure. This is scarcity mindset. This is anxiety. Giving a name to your own emotion on a brain science level strengthens this bridge called the anterior cingulate axis. And that anterior cingulate axis connects the emotional and rational parts of your brain. Literally, when you're naming emotions, this is sadness, that bridge strengthens, and it actually helps you better regulate the emotion. But you're on a deeper level, just validating your experience. You're seeing what's really happening as opposed to what many of us do and we're taught to do. It's not that bad. Don't be so sensitive. Don't be so dramatic. You're making everything such a big deal, or you're always making it about you. Just no, this is sadness. I'm recognizing it. E is explore your family system. Get more curious. What happened to your parents, your grandparents? What were some of the patterns of behavior around emotions, relationships? If you were adopted, look at your adopted family system. What was in that environment that was taught or caught? A is acknowledge your pain point. We all have them. My pain point is not feeling important. My pain point is feeling stupid. My pain point is shame. I still carry this deep sense of shame, which I think is just my father's shame that he wouldn't acknowledge. So I've internalized a lot of his shame that he won't take accountability for. So if you're a child of a narcissistic parent, you probably are carrying this sense of shame that you don't understand why you carry it. So just even that, as exploring your family system, can give you a little flexibility. But acknowledge your pain point. Know that they don't go away. But when you name them, when you recognize them, when you own them, they shift. There's a quantum physics theory that says when we observe an object, the very nature of the object observed. So if I'm observing this water bottle, all the little molecules in it are actually changing as I'm observing it. With our thoughts, when we observe the thought or the emotion, when we observe the emotion, we, by observing it, can change the very nature of that emotion. And then R is rewrite your narrative. So based on your pain point, if my pain point is I'm stupid, I'm going to ask myself in the R of my heart method, is that my preferred story? Do I prefer to feel and think that I'm stupid? No.
Mm.
Do I occasionally feel that way? Absolutely. But what do I prefer to feel? I prefer to feel like an intelligent person, or at least I prefer to feel like someone who's intellectually curious and willing to learn. I may not be the smartest person in the room, but I'm curious and I love to learn. That's what I prefer. That's the R. And then the T is turn within. Going back to our body skill, simply turning back to your breath, taking in that deep breath, noticing 3 colors in your environment, 3 sounds, 3 objects, or giving yourself 17 seconds, turn within and ask yourself, what is my preferred outcome? What do I really want to happen? We're constantly thinking about what we don't want to happen. Make room for the thing you actually want to happen. Imagine it just for 17 seconds. Infuse it with some joy or some excitement. Create that half smile with the sides of your lips. Change your chemistry in your body. Turn within and connect to your nervous system, because that's where real connection happens. And so that's what I really want to encourage people to do, is reframe loneliness as a spectacular golden ticket that just came in your mailbox. It's an invitation for you to get to know yourself on a deeper level. You're opening up that invitation. You have this golden ticket. It's an opportunity to let go of self-limiting beliefs that no longer serve you. You can't get rid of them, but you can create new beliefs, that rewriting of the narrative that are in alignment with what you really want, that are in alignment with your values. Maybe you don't even know what your values are. Maybe you don't even know what's important to you anymore because you've made everyone else important. Well, guess what? Loneliness is an opportunity for you to ask yourself, what's most important in my life right now? Just asking that simple question. What's the single most important thing to me right now in my life? It's peace. It's peace of mind. It's a sense of peace. Whatever it is for you, just by acknowledging that, that's one step closer to knowing a value that's important to you. That could be then a GPS system. It could be a filter for how you make choices. If I'm going to choose yes or no, will this event, will this thing bring me peace or deplete me of my peace? I have the courage to say no. It will bring peace. I have the courage to say yes, even if it disappoints others. And so, yes, my goal is for you to reframe loneliness, to connect to your nervous system, to really start that healing process with your parasympathetic nervous system, one breath at a time, one value at a time, and one creative imagination at a time.
That is so beautiful, Sylvia. I loved every
Marta,
second of this conversation. I think it will
thank
be 2
you.
podcast episodes. Thank you so much.
I just want to share this quick story. I met a woman from Germany who's an expat. She's been living there 8 years from America. And I told her that I was feeling a little bit down coming back from Miami and again, a little bit unsure. And she told me a story. She had sold everything in the US, put everything in a backpack, was backpacking through Europe, then ended up in Thailand. And she was out of money. She'd reached her end and she was like, that's it. I failed. I didn't make it. And the tour guide turned to her and said, you're not there yet. You're almost there. And so with loneliness, sometimes we think that's it. We failed. We're stuck. We're going to be alone forever. You're not there yet. You're almost there. You're not there yet. And sometimes I really believe it's like that second that you feel that you're just about to give up and say, that's it, no more, is usually the second before the miracle happens. So maybe loneliness really is just that one phase before everything changes, where things start to become more true for you. And if you are doubting where you are right now, my last maybe piece of advice is, as cheesy as it might sound, is trust the process, but also trust that where you are right now is not your final destination. This is just a part of the adventure. And the mess that you're going through right now, I promise you, will eventually become your message. And it will become the message that you share with others to help them where you once were.
This is so beautiful, Sylvia. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much. It's
so
been such
much.
a pleasure.
Reset Stories is a podcast created by Dea Ex Machina, produced by Cristina Rambaldi, hosted by Marta Mondelli. Intro music by Fabio Antonelli. You can hear the audio episodes wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow us here, and if you like what we do, rate and review us. Help us grow. If you want to be in touch, please send us comments here and messages at our Instagram page at Reset Stories Podcast.